Welcome to The Glass Ceiling, the podcast where business leaders share their stories, struggles and triumphs.
There is a lot in that. There's a lot of learning.
We sort of had different views on how the business should be ran.
The next 10 years looks like for South Australia.
Startup's the easiest.
I'm your host, Marissa Hankinson from Wavebreaker, and I'm passionate about amplifying their voices. Join me as we explore the highs and lows of innovation, entrepreneurship and leadership. From founders to CEOs, our guests will share their insights, experiences and advice on how to succeed and make a lasting impact. Get ready for inspiring conversations and valuable lessons. Let's shatter the glass ceiling, one story at a time. George, welcome to The Glass Ceiling. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Before we get into our chat, I just want to tell our listeners a little bit about you. George Belpario is the founder of Fasta Pasta, a beloved Australian brand renowned for its delicious, authentic Italian cuisine. With a passion for sharing the flavours and traditions of his Italian heritage, George has built a successful business that has become synonymous with quality, freshness and community. Under George's leadership, Fasta Pasta has expanded to multiple locations, employing hundreds of staff and serving thousands of customers every week. Despite the demands of running a growing business, George remains committed, even though you said you haven't been to work for about 10 years, you're still strategically involved.
Still involved, but yes.
Yeah. You are committed to the finest ingredients, supporting local suppliers and fostering a culture of excellence.
Where do you get this stuff from?
So join us as we have a chat to George. I am intrigued about this conversation. I think I'm going to really, really enjoy it.
I hope so.
Yeah, we've had a bit of a chat off camera as well. So, George, welcome to The Glass Ceiling.
Thank you, Marissa.
Yeah. So let's get started. So, am I allowed to say your age?
Of course you are.
You're proud of your age.
Yeah, happy to have made it. I've got friends that would love to say that they could get to 71. They didn't, but yeah.
You're looking very well on it.
Thank you. Well. Feel good.
Yeah. And so you came to Australia when you were 3 years old.
Correct.
Yeah. So let's go back to that because I'm from the UK originally, very, very different. So you were, 1950s you came over?
58, yep.
Yeah. So your dad and his younger brother came out earlier?
Dad and his little brother came out, I don't think they came the same year. Dad came out in 55. I was 6 months old. His brother would have come out, I'm guessing, about a year or so later. They were the oldest of 6 kids. What that did is it freed up the little bit of land that was left for the other 4 as they grew up. Plus, Dad and Uncle Pat sent over a bit of money the first couple of years, which would have expanded those few acres. All of a sudden, you got 4 kids living on, say, 20 acres instead of 6 kids living on 10 acres. The whole equation changes. So.
Yeah. So what was your dad's, did he have a trade or?
No, Dad was grew up on the land. All his ancestors would have been sheep and wheat farmers. They didn't even have tobacco back in our village at that time. They did a couple of decades later. It changed the landscape. But no, they were farmers and not a lot of money around in the 50s anywhere in Europe after the war. So we're basically
migrated?
Yes, but we're basically boat people. I always say, when
you literally came over on a boat.
We literally came over on a boat for 6 weeks, and we are economic migrants. That's the expression I was looking for.
Economic migrants, fantastic. So, where did you get your entrepreneurial from? You obviously, I think these things are ingrained in you. You either have got it or you haven't got it. I don't think it's something that you can teach. Were you that one who hustled at school or always had a bit of a side job? Or
Always. Selling papers at 12 years old, working in the East End markets, 13, 14, the produce markets, and even not just working for a boss. I'd even bring, get a bit of fruit and veg, mate, not veg, take it to school and sell apples and pears out of your bag. Always half asleep at school because you're getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to the markets 3 mornings a week. I just thought it was normal. I thought all kids did that sort of thing. I think to want to do business, you've got to have a work ethic, and I got that from my parents. It's a rural thing. I don't think it's an Italian thing per se. I think all people from the country side
Yeah.
have a different sort of approach to life than people from the city. And that's just the fact. That's not a criticism.
Their days are a lot longer and there's a lot more responsibility, and unfortunately nobody's going to do it for you, so someone's got to do it.
Correct.
So,
Mum and Dad were always hard workers. I think Dad was a bit of an entrepreneur. He wasn't lucky. His timing was always wrong, but he was a good man. He had a lot of friends. He had a great attitude to life. I learnt a lot from his sense of humour. Mum was hardworking. Mum could work 7 days a week. She'd pop a kid out. She had 6 kids. She'd pop a kid out and go back to work. In fact, the oldest girl raised the younger two almost. You know, she was looking after them before school, after school. It was a different world in the 60s and 70s. But yeah.
So I'm going to go back, because is it really about luck? You said, oh, my dad was wasn't lucky. Do you think luck plays a huge part in business?
Timing's everything. You've got to work hard, because if you don't give a damn and you don't work and you don't plan and you don't like people and you don't know what you're doing.
Don't like people like that.
Well, no. If in my game, in hospitality, you've got to like people. You've got to like the crowd. You've got to be able to handle the rush, and that involves liking people and putting up with stress. And I had a way of handling. I'd fill up the restaurant with bookings, and then when people complained that the table wasn't ready, I'd buy them a drink, of course, which you do. My attitude was, a booking gets you in here. We were cocky. A booking doesn't get you a table, but we ran fun places. Yeah. It worked. My style of management worked. Fasta Pasta is a classic example. It works. But timing is everything. You can have a fantastic idea. You can have all the planning. You can have the right people, and then something. We'll say COVID comes along.
Yeah, the pandemic comes along.
That's the luck. That's the time. Your life partner leaves you. Your business partner turns out to be not as straight as in business as you. That happens a lot. I know a lot of people that work harder than I, smarter than me, and didn't quite get there. So that's where the element of luck. But you've still got to
do the hard jobs.
Yeah, you got to love what you do and do what you love, and it'll happen.
So before you mentioned hospitality, you mentioned the markets. Were you always hospitality, or did you ever deviate into a different before you hit on hospitality?
I did a couple of years at law school.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. My son's a lawyer, my brother's a lawyer, my daughter-in-law's a lawyer. I'm surrounded by them. I didn't like the fact you're always solving people's problems. I worked it out. Even at law school, we used to do Tuesday evenings, we'd have a legal workshop. We weren't lawyers. They knew we weren't lawyers, but they just get an idea of their position. They'd still have to go to legal aid or see a lawyer. And I just realised all these people are coming in whinging about this, their neighbours, their life partner, their business partner, the government. Do I want to spend the rest of my life doing this? And I realised at a very early age, no. I was also a waiter at the time, 2 or 3 nights a week.
You know what? That's that work ethic. It's not. You can't be a full-time student. You've always got to work.
And a lot of students end up in the field that do part-time or they're at uni. Some end up with a degree and still pursue their second love, which becomes their first love. With me, it became my first love. I went to work for the government. I was working in the Australian Taxation Office for 4.5 years, but it was just too restrictive. And a lot of people, it was a dream job. The money was good. You don't work really hard. It was interesting. It's mentally stimulating, but I think it just wasn't enough. I needed, without knowing it at the time, I was young, I needed to work for myself. And the opportunity came up. A gentleman, Vic Ventura, he's still a mentor today, still a friend. Vic's 17, 18 years older than I am. I'd worked for him in his own restaurant. I'd worked with him in other people's restaurants over the previous 7, 8 years. Our paths had crossed several times. And he asked me if I was ready to open a restaurant. Without thinking, I said yes. And
well, you didn't have like the chef background or anything like that. We talked about your mum being a big influence for you in the kitchen. And obviously you're one of 6 children.
Yes, oldest of 6.
Yeah, so that's like big family. So go on. Sorry.
No, not at all. You're right. And I think that's what was probably holding me. I never thought of opening a restaurant at that age. I may have eventually. It may have taken me another 10 years.
So
Because
what were you, mid-20s by this stage?
Yeah. I would have been 79. I was 25, exactly, right in the mid-20s. And the reason that's the greatest fear of any young person in hospitality. If you're not a chef, a lot of chefs don't always succeed because they don't focus on front of house. A lot of waiters that don't know enough about back of house have problems.
Yeah.
You sort of almost need that partnership of somebody in the back, somebody at the front, and they're usually the best partnerships.
Yeah.
And this is what happened. Now, Vic wasn't a chef, but he'd been doing it long enough. He picked up it. He was best waiter I'd ever seen, but he admitted it that he was burnt out. He said, I don't want to talk to people anymore. I've had it.
I want to hide.
Yeah,
I'll
he
hide
was
in the back.
late 40s, but he learnt enough about the kitchen that no one could bluff him. And if somebody walked out, on a Friday, Saturday night, which I'd seen happen in other restaurants, and the owners panic and the service goes downhill, Vic could put the apron on, or he was already in there working anyway. No one ever left us because they didn't have that leverage. And I trusted Vic sufficiently. He was fine. There was no ego clash between us. He ran the back, I ran the front. We got on very, very well for 40-odd years.
And it sounds like you had that, you said, you spoke about people and you love people. You really had that, the bookings not guarantee a table. I'll keep you in. I think there's a couple of restaurants that I go to in Adelaide here. They never turn you away. It does not matter. They could be up to the hilt. And you always feel special. They've taken the time. They're giving you a good service.
The best restaurant in the world is a subjective thing. It's where you are known and liked. So if you can walk in, you feel comfortable. The food's got to be okay. You don't have to have the best food. You've got to have good, fresh. You've got to have all the givens. But if you're known and liked there and you're made to feel special, people don't go out just to eat. People go out special occasion. They don't feel like washing the dishes. It's on the way home. It's before the theatre. There's often a lot of reasons people go out. So it's understanding that keeps you ahead of the curve.
Yeah. And sometimes saying, I've done that a few times and I've got tickets to Her Majesty's, and they go, no worries. And all of a sudden they realise that, you're on a bit of a clock, and just taking that time to even just know about you.
Yep.
So you did the restaurant.
Yep.
You just mentioned there about Vince being able to get the apron on and, staff didn't leave you. Do you think there is something in that? It doesn't matter where you are within the business, having that mentality of rolling your sleeves up and getting stuck on when you need is a big thing.
It's part of leadership. You lead by example. The team's got to believe in you. And part of that belief is knowing that you or your partner or there's people there that can do the job. So you're not relying on them to have to do it. A, that puts unnecessary pressure on them. B, that reduces their belief in you. So you've got to lead. I believe you've got to lead by example. You've got to have a clear vision. You've got to share that vision. You've got to surround yourself with smart people, smarter than you, no problems. But you've got to know what you're doing. You've got to believe in the job. You've got to love the job. Mm-hmm. I think if you want to succeed, you've got to find something you're really passionate about and do it for other people for a while, then take the plunge and do it for yourself. And if you get all that right, get the team around you right, 9 out of 10 times time will look up. You don't know at what point you've got there, but the money comes. If you're doing it for the money, it's not going to come.
No,
like,
I can't be
very
the driver.
rarely. Yeah, it's like winning a lottery if you're doing it for the money. You've got to jag it. You do it for the right reasons. You spend a decade partially working for other people. A few years later, you just wake up one day and it's happened.
It's a bit like your apprenticeship, really. You've got to do those
hard yards. Yep.
You've got to do the hard yards.
Yep.
So you talk about being front of house, and obviously your business partner was back of house. But what got you from that restaurant to the next level? Sometimes people can just be content with that.
Well, I think if the entrepreneurial spirit in you want to do well. Once I burnt my bridges with the government, it wasn't going back there.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to go back to uni. Life was good. Business was going well. dipped my toe in the water with real estate. Vic and I bought a building in the city. Back in the day, we're talking a couple $100,000. You buy a nice building in the city, 1981, 82. We worked hard. We had the right attitude. We got lucky early. The business took off and we managed to
And this was
keep
just
it
one
on
restaurant
track.
at one time.
La Menza 1979 was one of the busiest Italian restaurants in Adelaide. What we did there was interesting. We were the first Italian restaurant to not, at the time, every Italian restaurant was a clone of every other Italian restaurant. They were all white walls. They all had Alitalia posters. They all had Chianti bottles hanging from the bar.
Red and white tablecloths.
Most of them had a pizza bar in the corner, kitchen out the back, toilet next to the kitchen out the back.
It was very...
Yeah. We opened it up. Ours was blue walls, Bruegel prints, stainless steel kitchen, completely open. We had Western Red Cedar bar in the middle.
It must have been quite controversial at that time. I mean...
They could have flopped. We went with our gut feeling, let's do it different. Let's have some interesting food, but make the venue interesting. And it worked. There's that little bit of luck. The colour could have been a little bit wrong. We picked a location down the end of Rundle Street. The East End Market was just in the process of vacating. They were still there.
So
but
that could have been high risk.
Very high risk. But it worked in our favour. We got some rents very, very cheap for La Menza, and then al fresco across the road. We opened a big gelateria. And that part of town exploded. Now, it could have gone the other way, as you say. It was risky. That's where the element of luck comes in that you don't control. We controlled what we could. We worked hard. We planned. We had the right team, the right food. But the other things we couldn't control happened to fall in our lap. And it exploded. We sold La Menza, kept al fresco, put the money into a building, which we opened Marco Polo, which was another full-service restaurant, 170-seater. But we had this 300 square metre basement. And I told you a little bit of the story. We can elaborate on that later. But, that really set us up. We were already doing well. Life was kind. But then Fasta Pasta really set the...
So where did Fasta Pasta come from? So you've got your Marco Polo, you've got your gelateria. Where did that, we talked about you had this dormant real estate. But come on.
Sometimes your greatest asset can come from just a throwaway idea. Now, everything we open, we had a point of difference. This is very important in business. If you're going to do something, if you're going to open a plumbing business or electrical, don't just open it and rely on your trade. Come up with a point of difference that makes your customers talk about you. With us, La Menza had the different look and the feel and the open kitchen. Al fresco, we made gelati in public view behind a glass wall. We pulped watermelons, we pulped mangoes, we baked cakes, all in public view. So the smell, the visual was mind-boggling. We see 100 people in this gelateria, and people were coming in, with that wow factor was in the visual, not just the product. The product was good, but the whole package
was an experience.
Marco Polo, we had a couple of ladies making gnocchi in the corner. We'd give it away, we'd take it home, we'd give it to our friends. We had a lot of gnocchi specials, but that was visual.
Yeah.
Extend that a little bit further. Fasta Pasta was in a basement. The front door was down a side street. It normally would be very difficult to fill. I had the luxury of a busy restaurant, Marco Polo. Yeah. So if Marissa came in with a partner, I could say, guys, you finished the meal. Can you do me a favour? I need the table, but dessert's on me. Come downstairs. I'll buy you coffee. I'll give you what's downstairs. After about 4 months, there was no downstairs to take them to because it was chock-a-block. But in that first 4 months, we just filled it with friends and rallies and regular customers. The other thing that made it work, apart from that, I put 3 machines downstairs, one extruder, which just pushed out spaghetti and macaroni. The other one made cappelletti, which are like ravioli, and the other one made ravioli. So one was meat-filled, one was ricotta-filled. So there was this visual wall of, it's like a little factory.
It must have smelled fantastic.
It was more, or the smell came from the sauce cooking. Pasta doesn't actually have a, but visually it was amazing. And every business we've had has sort of had something like that. We've found a way to get the public talking about the place without necessarily being on TV. When
or
you get
advertising or whatever.
Yeah. So back to I don't remember your question, Marissa.
So I was turning around and saying, so Fasta Pasta really came from that basement as a overflow really to the Marco Polo. You kept that unique difference of you wanted something visually stimulating that could be a conversation starter when people weren't in the restaurant.
Correct.
But then where did you take, what made you go, I can replicate this?
We normally didn't replicate anything. And you're right, Fasta Pasta was open in 84. We didn't replicate it till 89. In those 5 years, we opened a restaurant called Via Veneto, which was more casual than anything we'd done. It had a 100-seater full service, and then it had a 60-seater pizzeria, but just electric.
Yeah.
It was in Goodger Street, took off. Everything we opened worked. Energy, location, the right team, it worked. Then we did something really exciting, which is probably the most interesting business I ever did. I was involved in a place called Sette Bello, corner of South Terrace and Pulteney Street. It's no longer there. It's now a gaming room. Machines have taken over everything. We opened the first wood oven.
This was before Pokey's probably.
Yes.
I was going to say just as a.
This opened in 88, and it was the first wood oven pizza bar in Adelaide.
Oh, wow.
Now, we got the idea from Italy. We flew over a guy we'd met that owned his own pizzeria in Milano Marittima in Italy. So we got on well, said, you want a little holiday? We gave him good money. I was a pizza maker, but I didn't understand about making pizza dough with spring water and using the double O flour, letting it rise in the cool room over 48 hours. This was all new to me. I was a pizza maker. I'd worked at Pizza Hut and I'd learnt to make that. That's okay. Not a problem. So all of this happened in those 5 years. While we had Sette Bello, one of our regulars used to come in at least once a week, was building some shops on the corner of Glenburn and Greenhill. The precinct, they're still there. The Fasta Pasta that we opened there that was there for nearly 20 years is no longer there for a couple of reasons. We do move them around as the customer base changes. He wanted us as an anchor tenant there. I kept saying to him, look, I go to Italy for a few weeks. I'll come back with something that'll blow you away. No, don't want something new. I want a Fasta Pasta there. We kept saying no. He kept upping the ante.
So did you, sorry to interrupt because this was before my time in Adelaide. So you had Marco Polo. Was the basement called Fasta Pasta?
Yes.
It was.
Yeah. The brand, we had a registered logo. We had
I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, everything we did, we put a bit of work into a brand. We didn't register the logo until we took off. Then all of a sudden we painted it. We had
I was going to say, you've got to
had a trademark as opposed to a brand. But the deal just got so good. And from memory, without double checking, I think we ended up with nearly 18 months rent free, and he did most of the fit out. But it had to be a Fasta Pasta. So we buckled in. I'm glad we did.
Yeah. That's a little bit of luck or good negotiation.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Not everyone. That's not a position that everyone's in.
We didn't need it. No. We didn't need it. So we could afford to say thank you, but no thank you. In the end, the deal got so good we had to say yes. It wasn't the fact that it worked. We knew it was going to work. We just were cocky. We knew it was going to work. And it wasn't the speed of its success. There was one particular gentleman I'll never forget. We had a lot of food reps that we got to know. They wanted one. They wanted a Fasta Pasta. We're not going to keep doing this. Until one night, I'd been working there about a month, and elderly gentleman, asked for a puttanesca and a spaghetti bolognese. Gave me a $20 note. I gave him a few dollars change. He took his cutlery. Now, the cutlery was the key. That was our system. They sat anywhere they liked. If they moved, the staff were trained. We didn't have table number. The tables were numbered, but the customers didn't know. Yeah. So they didn't know they were sitting on.
That's part of that, getting to know your customer.
They didn't know they'd moved from B4 to C5. We knew, and we had a system where we were always on top of it. So we very rarely lost a meal, even when the place was packed and there was queues. This gentleman never asked me, how do you find us? Everyone else sort of did, the new customers. How do you know where I'm going to be sitting? Do you call us out This gentleman went to the bar, got a carafe of wine and a soft drink, went and sat down and started chatting to his missus. It dawned on me that we'd created a system. This was before bistros, and it was a pub system that we'd sort of perfected. And I thought, we've got a little bit more than a business. We've got a system. We've got something. So the legal training kicked in. I started, how can we duplicate this quickly without going to the bank and borrowing millions? Cut people in. The right people, give them half at the right price, and all of us. And then I learnt to franchise, and then.
So what year was your first franchise?
89 was technically a franchise, not in the sense of percentage of turnover, but it was a business partnership. We owned half. I learnt a lot from that, and we had two partners that had a quarter each of the business. And we did that because we were still in the mood. I wasn't aware at that stage that we were going to open more of these. We were still opening things. I was in my early 30s by then.
The world's your oyster.
Yeah. You're bulletproof. So we did that to free up time and capital to move on to the next venture, which for the next couple of decades happened to be Fasta Pasta. I say it was a type of franchise because we've explained very clearly they were a partner in this business, but we owned the name, and the two had to be the same food-wise. We had to buy from the same suppliers.
You were duplicating that system.
Yeah. We were learning about what franchising really should be about, which is standard.
It probably wasn't even the word.
It wasn't. You're right. I didn't understand what a franchise was. We learned that later. It was an American word that we were just partners, but we're keeping the name. If we do any more of these, blah, and they were okay with it. They understood. It was transparent. There was no arguments, and we're still friends today.
Yeah, correct. So then you went and had 12 in South Australia?
We had 12 we had 11 in South Australia before we had 8. We quickly moved to 11. Before we went into state, we were approached by a syndicate of guys that very, very successful. They had done KFC in Australia, Pizza Hut in Australia, Sizzlers in Australia, and they were currently doing Lone Star. They approached us to buy us out. We had 8 restaurants already in Adelaide. We said we're not interested in selling. We're only beginning to grow.
Yeah, this is your journey.
And then they explained how franchising works. Would you sell us the rights to do the rest of the country? And you guys do. So that's basically what happened.
Okay. Yeah. So you still had a controlling interest though, which was good. So Fasta Pasta, so you're still involved in the business.
Yes.
At more of a strategic level.
Yep.
So what's happened to Fasta Pasta now? So it's celebrating what? Where are we now?
41 years this year. We did our 40th year last year in 24. We've had a couple of steps backwards. We've consolidated, and that's necessary every now and then. You sort of get rid of the ones that are losing money.
Yeah.
Sometimes you prop them up for growth reasons. We currently only have 2 interstate, but we still have 23 restaurants because Adelaide's grown. Adelaide's our strongest market. So we have 21 here, going very, very well. When I left, I'd set up 5 different divisions. We had a retail division of restaurants that we owned, and then we had, at the time, 30 restaurants that we had franchised. So 9 we owned, actually company-owned restaurants, 30 were franchised. Even the ones we owned had a franchise agreement back to the head office. We had a manufacturing division where we made all the sauces and shipped them around Australia, gas flush, bag in box. It's not like zapped and served to you. They were the base sauce, the Napoli or the Bolognese or the bechamel. They still had to be cooked in a pan and ingredients added and freshened. We made all the pasta, par-cooked, portion controlled, bag in box, again, gas flushed, shipped around, nothing frozen. It was all good shelf life. Pasta is. I mean, you buy pasta, it wasn't made yesterday. We had a building division, which
is your real estate. Yeah.
No, that was another. The real estate that we own was a 5th division. The building division was to change the stores, to
like
open
fit
them.
out.
Yeah. So we had 5 profit centres that reported to me. They all had a general manager, and that still exists today. That's sort of the foundation that set the company up long term.
Looking back, because you say there's luck involved in there, working with the right people. If you look back, and I know you're obviously still involved in the business, but would there be anything that you've done different?
Hindsight's a very easy tool to use. Would have bought a lot more real estate and sold none. We sold real estate to buy a little bit more. Would have bought a lot more, knowing what I know today that, interest rates go up and down, but generally banks will fund you into the next venture if you've got a good history.
And assets are assets at the end of the day.
Definitely do that. I mean, our biggest division now is real estate. My own real estate's what's enabled me to retire early.
Yeah.
We lived reasonably frugally in the 90s. We didn't live frugally, but we didn't live extravagantly. We didn't have flash cars and flash homes. So we put a lot of our profits into real estate. I would have put a lot more. I would have kept a lot.
It's interesting you say that because I sometimes think some of the most successful business people that are very, very humble. They're not the big flashy, and I think that's because they know not necessarily just work ethic, being the hard yards, but you've also got to plough money back into the businesses. You've got to invest, and that's got to compound, and it will compound over time rather than extracting things and, having the big flash car and having the perception, even talking about your ATO days before off camera, you turned around and went, if you're only living on X amount, but you're driving a big Porsche, you're going to get a knock on the door because something's not quite adding up. It's interesting. But in this day and age, a lot of it is about that perception and the external perception you're giving on what success is, not necessarily.
Most of our peers that I really, really admire and respect that have done well in life, and even those that haven't, the best people, as you say, are humble. They don't take themselves too seriously. They get it that there is a big element of luck in their success. There's a lot of hard work, of course, but there is an element of luck. There's also they've learned to give back.
Yeah.
And you've got to do that. If you want a really balanced, interesting life, you enjoy your success, but you've got to learn to give back, whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's mentoring young people, whatever it is, you've got to give back if you want that balance.
Yeah, because you've been involved with the Variety Club for...
Not a club anymore. It's the Variety SA. The club, it sort of connotates the wrong... It was called the Variety Club for many years. Variety SA...
But it's a bigger beast now.
Yeah. Look, one of the best charities in the world, they single digits actually to run it. So they run the whole organisation with 8-9% of their turnover. And there'd be charities that would kill for those sort of numbers. So charities that pay, and I get why, but they pay 60% of their turnover on salaries and rents.
100%, yeah. It's all about doing good, and they put it in the right place.
We have a lot of volunteers. I was chair of the bash for 3 years and involved a lot of time and my own money, but you actually organise the bash, you go out there and do surveys, all on your own time. Not only do you not get paid, it costs you money to do the job because you're paying for your own accommodation, your own petrol, your own...
Like you say, you're giving back.
Yeah. But we raised $6 million in 3 years, right through COVID. And it's a good feeling. It's just a great feeling helping people that, can't always help themselves.
That's definitely about giving back to the community, which is a big thing.
Italian radio is the same. It's one of my mum's greatest joys is to have that radio on and, in the backyard. And Dad, not so much, but Mum always had the radio on, loved the music, loved the news, loved the language. I've spent 10 years with the, Italian Radio Italiana 531. And it was just a great joy to help in any way you can. It's good.
So you talked about mentoring young people. We've got a lot of listeners that they're all at different stages in business. Sometimes they're actually employed and got that little bit of a spark. What advice would you give to our listeners?
Make sure that you know that you love what you do. You do what you love, but you've got to love what you do. If you don't do something because it worked for a friend of yours, do something because you enjoy doing it, whatever it is. It could be making dolls' dresses. If you enjoy doing it, do it for somebody else for a while and learn from them. then if you get an opportunity to do it for yourself, jump in. When you get a fantastic opportunity offered, take it. Say yes. Worry about it later.
George, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on The Glass Ceiling. And we were talking about before, and I love Tedesca. So, we had great discussion.
One of my favourites too, Marissa.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Glass Ceiling. If you've liked what you heard, please subscribe, as we'd love to have you as part of our community. We're grateful to our guests for sharing their inspiring stories and insights with us. This podcast was brought to you by Wavebreaker. Join us next time as we shatter the glass ceiling, one story at a time.